Welcome back to Tipsy Whiskey Shenanigans. I'm Steven, and tonight, whenever the heck you're watching this, we are getting into why you need to stop buying so much budget bourbon. But before we get into that, please do me that favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Helps us out a ton, and we seriously appreciate the support. But let's get in today's video. So, there's nothing wrong with buying budget bourbon. But it can get to a point where it's too much. It's too much. We're going to kick it off with number one with once you've had one, you've had them all. And I know, yes, that's not entirely true because that is such a huge generality of a term that there is no way to, qualitative or quantitatively speak entirely 100% true on that note. That being said, I do think there's only so good you can get with a budget bourbon. Budget bourbon, it's cheaper for a reason because it's not as high quality. It's all lower proof. So you're missing out on a lot of those amazing things that you can get once you get to higher proof, higher age. You're missing out on a lot of the great things in the bourbon world because me personally, I like that higher proof stuff and that higher age stuff. And you don't usually get a lot of that in the budget category. I think the oldest budget bourbon I've ever seen is like 10 years old, like Eagle Rare, Russell's 10, things of that nature, which arguably, yeah, they're pretty good bottles. I mean, there's nothing wrong with like Bullet 10, Russell's 10, Eagle Rare. There's nothing wrong with that. They're just not that exciting. They're low proof. They have a nice little bit of age, but it's not bringing it to some wild, crazy subsection of, bourbon. It's not bringing it anywhere new. With staying in that budget bourbon category, you're honestly limiting what you're going to get out of your whiskey. A lot of your whiskey is going to be like 6 to 10-year-old 90 proof bourbons, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, they're good, but you don't want your collection to just be 6 to 10-year-old 90 proof bourbons. You need a little bit more. You need to diversify your portfolio. You need more different products. And if you stick with only budget bourbons, you're missing out on so many other phenomenal stuff. And it doesn't need to be high proof. Like a 18-year-old 90 proof bottle is phenomenal as well. You just need to kind of explore new things, and you're not going to get that staying entirely on like a cheaper budget. You need to spend more than $30 on a bottle of whiskey to get more out of it. And then after that one, kind of staying in the same vein, we're talking quality over quantity. And yes, there is some perks of staying in the budget bourbon world is you can get more whiskey for your money. That being said, like I said previously, you want to expand your portfolio a little bit. You want to get into those higher age stuff, maybe the higher proof stuff, and you're not going to find that in that $30 realm. So you need to kind of spend a little bit more money. Yes, you're going to have less whiskey, but you're going to have overall better whiskey than what you've had. And it gets to a certain point. Not going to lie, when I first started in the whiskey game, I bought nothing but a bunch of $30 and $40 bottles. Nowadays, I basically only buy $60 bottles. If it's a $30 bottle, I may or may not buy it. It's so, I don't know. At some point, you don't really need any more budget bourbon. Like I said, last one. Once you've had one, you've had them all. Like there's nothing crazy. I would rather see the comparison between 2 bottles at $60 than like 4 at $30. That's just me personally. So I think there's a fine point, and you need to find it yourself. Because again, there's quality over quantity. You need to figure out what is your perfect ratio of I'm getting the most amount of whiskey at like a quality that I find acceptable, where I'm getting that inherent value that I personally like. So there's a fine line where that maybe it's for you, it's, I only buy $100+ bottles. I only buy bottles around like the $40 mark. And then I like to get those, like whatever for you is kind of that peak of your value. For me, it's like the 60 to 80 range. I think those are like where I gravitate towards, because I think that's the best value in the bourbon market for price to quality ratio. So again, you want to buy better whiskey rather than having just more whiskey. There's not really any point to having more whiskey if it's all just more crap whiskey. And not everything under $30 is crap. It's just like sometimes you need to spend a little bit more money to get a little bit better of a whiskey. And then after that one, something that is honestly super practical, that's not actually in the vein of money, because usually I focus very highly on value, because that's something that's very important to me, because I'm a budgetish bourbon guy. I'm a available, readily available, cheaper value kind of guy. I'm a very value centric whiskey consumer. I don't like to just, buy bottles because they look cool or whatever. I want to focus on the value, and there's, where price meets quality, things of that nature. I focus on value. But outside of that vein, something that's still very practical, but in a completely different concept, is going to be capacity, space, capacity. You might not have a huge bourbon room. You might not have storage. So you might need to stop buying so much budget bourbon because you don't have room for that budget bourbon. So I think that's another reason why you shouldn't buy so much budget bourbon, is because bottles, they take up space on your shelves. You might be limited. Me currently, I'm at pretty much relative max capacity. Not max capacity in the sense of I don't have any more room. I mean, I can fill those shelves up even more than I want, but I have like 2 shelves of budget bourbon that I don't really drink, if we're being completely honest, because I don't really care for them, and they're just taking up space. Again, maybe that's another reason why I've stopped buying so much budget bourbon, because they just take up so much space. So you need to think of what value can I get in the world of whiskey without killing all my shelves? Because like, you do need some budget bourbon, but maybe you don't buy only budget bourbon because, again, they take up space. Unless if you have a ridiculous amount of storage to just store all the whiskey in the world, at some point it's going to get to the point where I can't buy any more whiskey just because I don't have the room for it. And I'm sure you would rather run into that problem with, I can't buy any more whiskey because I'm stacked with awesome bottles, compared to because I'm stacked with budget cheapo bottles that I don't care to drink, because they stack up after a while, and it's like not quite bad enough to drain pour, but also not quite good enough where you're like, I'm going to go out of my way to drink that. There's a fine line. Fine line. That being said, that is a wrap for today's video. Please do me that favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below of what you thought about my reasonings for why you should stop buying so much budget bourbon. Also, check out the Facebook, Instagram, and the Patreon. The links for all that stuff are down there below. That is a wrap for today's video. Cheers, y'all. We'll see you later.